Stop the theatrics. People like you always amplify their suffering. The physician deactivated the alert mid-cry, the warning flatlining beneath his palm as though it had never been. The woman on the bed convulsed. "I cannot feel my child," she murmured, fingers sliding on the rail, slick with perspiration. He let out a breath, already turning away. "You are not perishing. You are experiencing anxiety. Endeavor to conduct yourself like an adult." Standing behind her was a man, his shoulders rigid, his gaze fixed on the physician's retreating back. The doctor remained oblivious to what that silent man carried, or that every word he had just uttered was about to exact a devastating price. As we continue, please share your viewing location and remember to subscribe, as tomorrow's narrative is one you absolutely won't want to miss. The harsh glare of the overhead lights cast deep shadows across the bustling emergency department, where Naomi Ward clutched her husband's hand, her face contorted in agony. The stroke of midnight seemed to linger interminably in the sterile corridor. Their world had shrunk to the persistent beeping of medical equipment and the sharp, ragged intake of her breath. "There's something amiss, Elias," Naomi whispered, her free hand pressed against her swollen abdomen. "These aren't regular labor pains. It feels like I'm tearing apart from the inside." Elias Ward maintained an outward appearance of calm, though a visible tension tightened his jaw as he observed his wife's distress. 8 months pregnant, Naomi had been radiant just the day before. Now, her warm brown complexion had taken on a pallid hue, beads of sweat forming on her brow. Nurse Tessa Glenn guided the wheelchair with practiced efficiency, her hands steady. "Her blood pressure is escalating," she stated, checking the portable monitor. "We need to get her assessed immediately." "Please," Elias implored, his voice deliberately measured. "My wife requires urgent attention. These symptoms appeared so suddenly." "And now let's not get ahead of ourselves." Dr. Preston Hargrove's voice sliced through the air, as smooth and sharp as silk-wrapped steel. He approached with unhurried steps, barely glancing at the patient's file in his hand. "Mrs. Ward, is it? The initial jitters of pregnancy are perfectly commonplace." Naomi shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, doctor. I've thoroughly researched normal labor. This is different. It feels like something is being ripped apart." "Anxiety can frequently manifest as physical symptoms," Hargrove interjected, his smile never reaching his eyes, "particularly in certain demographics who may not be as conversant with adequate prenatal care." Elias felt his fingers twitch, but he kept his voice even. "Doctor, we have adhered to every recommendation. My wife has received excellent prenatal care. Something is gravely wrong." Nurse Glenn stepped forward. "Dr. Hargrove, her blood pressure is 160/95 and climbing. Perhaps we should—" "Thank you, Nurse Glenn." Hargrove's tone shifted several degrees colder. "I believe I am capable of assessing my own patient." He turned back to Naomi. "We will arrange for you to be settled in the hallway for observation. There's no immediate need to occupy a room." The distinct clicking of heels announced the arrival of Gail Renshaw. The hospital administrator's impeccably styled hair and crisply pressed suit seemed incongruous at this late hour. "Dr. Hargrove, I trust everything is under control? We need to maintain our exceptional emergency response metrics." "Just a nervous, expectant mother," Hargrove assured her. "Nothing that warrants disrupting our established protocols." Elias watched as they wheeled Naomi to a position against the wall, directly beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. A thin curtain offered the barest semblance of privacy. His FBI training urged him to take command, to demand action, to safeguard his wife. Yet, years of lived experience had imparted harsh lessons on how swiftly a black man's genuine concern could be misconstrued as threatening behavior in environments like this. "Sir," Nurse Glenn murmured as she adjusted Naomi's IV drip, "I'll keep a close watch on her. Please, try to remain composed." Naomi's grip on Elias's hand tightened as another surge of pain washed over her. "Baby," she gasped. "I can't. Something is truly wrong. I can feel it." "I'm right here," Elias reassured her, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. He watched the fetal monitor's numbers climb, his stomach clenching as Naomi's face contorted in agony. Dr. Hargrove passed by, pausing only briefly. "The wait time for imaging is substantial. We will re-evaluate in an hour or two." "An hour?" Elias struggled to maintain a level tone. "Her pain is intensifying with every passing minute." "Mr. Ward," Hargrove's voice dripped with condescension, "I understand your concern, but your wife's dramatic reaction is not proving helpful to anyone. Perhaps you could encourage her to remain calm." Nurse Glenn reappeared, her expression etched with worry as she checked Naomi's vital signs. "Doctor, her pressure is still rising. Shouldn't we at least—" "Unless you have suddenly acquired a medical degree, Nurse Glenn, please confine yourself to your designated duties," Hargrove interrupted, without looking up from his phone. Elias felt Naomi's hand go limp in his. Her eyes had become glazed and unfocused. The monitor's beeping grew more erratic. "She is not being dramatic," Elias stated, his carefully constructed composure beginning to fracture. "Something is seriously wrong." "Please, Mr. Ward," Gail Renshaw interjected, her professional smile fixed in place. "Dr. Hargrove is one of our most experienced physicians. Let us trust his judgment and avoid any unfortunate incidents." The threat was subtle, yet unmistakable. Elias observed the security guard subtly shift closer, his hand resting on his radio. One misstep, one raised voice, and he would be branded the angry black man, forcibly removed from his wife's side when she needed him most. Naomi's whisper drew his attention back. "Elias, I can't feel the baby moving anymore." The steady rhythm of the fetal monitor suddenly spiked, its alarm beginning to pulse with increasing urgency. Elias looked desperately toward the nurse's station, but no one moved with any discernible sense of emergency. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the alarm fell silent. Elias stared at the monitor in bewilderment. The warning lights had vanished, yet Naomi's grip on his hand had become terrifyingly weak. "Why did it stop?" he asked, his voice barely controlled. "The alarm. Why did it just—" But Nurse Glenn's face had gone ashen as she gazed at the monitor, and Elias felt the first genuine stab of fear pierce his practiced calm. A scream tore through the hallway like shards of glass. Naomi's body arched off the bed, monitors erupting into a cacophony of alarms and flashing lights. Her blood pressure readings plummeted as her pulse raced dangerously high. "Code Blue! We need assistance here!" Nurse Glenn slammed her palm against the emergency call button. Her other hand darted across the equipment, attempting to stabilize the readings that were spiraling out of control. Dr. Hargrove sauntered over, his expression one of irritation. With a single fluid motion, he reached past Tessa and silenced the shrieking alarms. "These readings are clearly erroneous. The equipment in the hallway can be unreliable." "Erroneous?" Elias grabbed the doctor's arm, his carefully maintained restraint finally shattering. "Look at her. She is dying." "Remove your hand," Hargrove said icily. "Security! She requires imaging immediately," Elias insisted, releasing the doctor's arm but planting himself firmly between Hargrove and the exit. "Get a surgeon down here. Something has torn internally." "Mr. Ward," Hargrove's voice dripped with disdain, "your emotional state is not proving beneficial. Perhaps you should step outside and allow the professionals to manage the situation." "Professionals?" Elias's voice trembled. "You have done absolutely nothing to assist her." Naomi's body jerked again, her eyes rolling back as her oxygen levels plummeted. The monitors Hargrove had not silenced screamed their warning. A young resident in rumpled scrubs rushed over, his face pale. "Dr. Hargrove, her vitals are critically low. Should I contact Dr. Parker?" Hargrove cut him off. Are you questioning my assessment of this situation? The resident's mouth opened and closed, his eyes darting between Naomi's convulsing form and his superior's cold stare. No, sir, but protocol dictates I am the protocol in this department. Hargrove's words fell like ice. Stand down. Nurse Glenn's hands flew over Naomi's body, attempting to stabilize her. She's hemorrhaging, doctor. Please, this is what transpires when hysteria is allowed to override medical judgment, Hargrove stated, making a show of checking his watch. If you are all quite finished. Naomi's body went rigid, blood beginning to saturate the thin hospital sheet. The resident took half a step forward, then froze as Hargrove's glare pinned him in place. Do something, Elias roared, his composure finally disintegrating. She's bleeding out. Security guards materialized at both ends of the hallway, their hands resting on their radios. Gail Renshaw reappeared beside them, her professional smile strained. Mr. Ward, please lower your voice. This is a hospital. It's a slaughterhouse, Nurse Glenn snapped, her hands pressed against Naomi's abdomen. Doctor, she requires surgery, now. The blood pressure readings crashed lower. Naomi's eyes fluttered, her grip on Elias's hand going slack. The resident looked ready to vomit, trapped between his training and his terror. Fine, Hargrove finally waved a dismissive hand. Initiate the procedure, but record my objection to this overreaction in the patient's chart. The ensuing moments dissolved into pandemonium. A trauma team burst in, shouting orders. The resident found his courage, albeit too late, barking for blood products and an operating room. Nurse Glenn rattled off statistics as they wheeled Naomi away, her voice tight with a mixture of fury and fear. Elias attempted to follow, but security personnel blocked his path. Through the gaps between their bodies, he watched the team rapidly transporting his wife down the corridor, blood dripping onto the pristine floor tiles. Time stretched and worked, like pulled taffy. Minutes, or perhaps hours later, Elias couldn't be certain. The resident emerged from the operating room. His scrubs were stained a deep crimson. His youthful face appeared aged by decades in a single night. The baby? He swallowed hard. We successfully delivered her. She is in critical condition, but stable. Elias felt a weak flutter of hope. And my wife? The resident's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head once. The world ceased to turn. Sound became distant, muffled, as if Elias were submerged in water. Through the haze, he saw Dr. Hargrove at the nurse's station, calmly dictating notes. Patient presented with anxiety symptoms deteriorated rapidly despite appropriate interventions. Complications arose unexpectedly. Demise was unavoidable given patient presentation and circumstances. Elias lunged forward, a sound like a wounded animal tearing from his throat. Security intercepted him before he could reach Hargrove, their muscular arms pinning him against the wall. Sir, remain calm, or we will be forced to escort you out, one guard warned. My wife is deceased, Elias's voice cracked. He murdered her. He simply stood there and murdered her. Now, Mr. Ward, Hargrove straightened his white coat, not even looking up from his charts. These situations are always tragic, but histrionics will not alter the medical reality. Perhaps if she had been more compliant with prenatal care. You son of a... Elias struggled against the guard's grip. Remove him, Gail Renshaw ordered, and alert the police if necessary. We cannot tolerate this kind of disruption. The guards began to drag Elias toward the exit. He ceased his struggles, his body suddenly heavy with grief and rage, and something darker beginning to germinate beneath it all. With careful movements, he reached for his wallet. The guards tensed, likely anticipating him to produce a phone to record them. But what Elias withdrew was something entirely different. A black leather credential case fell open, revealing a golden badge and the letters FBI gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The stairwell door slammed shut behind Elias, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the confined space. Dr. Hargrove stood halfway up the stairs, one hand on the railing, caught mid-stride. The expression on his face as he turned. "Excuse me, I have patience to—" Hargrove's words died in his throat as Elias held up his FBI credentials. Special Agent Elias Ward, Federal Bureau of Investigation. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "We need to discuss what has transpired with my wife." The color drained from Hargrove's face, his usual mask of authority cracking. He took a half step backward, bumping against the railing. I followed all standard protocols. Everything was documented." "Who silenced the fetal monitor?" Elias climbed one step, then another, each footfall deliberate. "Those alarms were functioning perfectly until someone manually deactivated them. That's a serious accusation." Hargrove's hand trembled slightly on the railing. "I acted within established medical guidelines. Any suggestion otherwise?" "Answer the question, doctor." Elias maintained his distance, hands loose at his sides. He didn't need to touch or threaten. His presence alone filled the stairwell like a suffocating smoke. "Who made the decision to disregard those warnings?" Sweat beaded on Hargrove's forehead. "I will need to consult with legal counsel before discussing specific treatment decisions." "Hospital policy clearly dictates hospital policy." Elias's laugh held no mirth. "My wife implored you for assistance. The nurse pleaded with you. Even your resident recognized something was amiss, but you chose to let her suffer." "You are emotionally compromised." Hargrove attempted to rally his usual condescension, but his voice wavered. "These situations are always difficult for family members to process rationally." "What I am processing," Elias cut in, "is how many other women you have killed in this manner. How many other unavoidable complications you have buried within paperwork." The stairwell door burst open. Gail Renshaw strode in, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete steps. "Dr. Hargrove, you are needed in labor and delivery." She positioned herself between them, a human shield in an expensive suit. "Mr. Ward, I am truly sorry, Agent Ward. This is neither the appropriate time nor place for confrontation." "There is never a right time to discuss deceased black mothers in your hospital, is there, Miss Renshaw?" Elias stated flatly. He didn't move. "Just NDAs and settlements and carefully worded press releases." "I understand you are grieving," she said, her professional smile firmly in place. "But creating disturbances will not bring her back." "Perhaps we should schedule a meeting with our patient advocacy team to negotiate my silence," Elias suggested, his eyes never leaving Hargrove. "How much is a deceased wife valued in your risk management calculations?" Two security guards appeared in the doorway, summoned by some silent signal. Renshaw's smile did not waver. "Please escort Agent Ward to the ground floor. He requires time to process his loss." "This is not over," Elias said quietly. "It is for now." Renshaw guided Hargrove toward the upper door. "Do not exacerbate the situation unnecessarily." The guards moved forward, but before they could reach him, Nurse Glenn slipped through the gap between them. She pressed a folded piece of paper into Elias's hand, her eyes fierce with resolve. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "So very sorry." Elias felt the edges of the paper bite into his palm as the guards firmly gripped his arms. They did not manhandle him. His credentials prevented that. But their message was clear: leave or be forcibly removed. He allowed them to guide him down the stairs, his mind already cataloging details, meticulously building the framework of an investigation. The paper in his hand felt like a key, though to what lock, he did not yet know. His phone vibrated as they reached the ground floor. The caller ID displayed SAC, Klein Ward. His supervisor's voice was tight with concern. "I just received a call from hospital administration. What on earth are you doing?" "My wife has died, Dana." Elias stood in the lobby, watching Hargrove and Renshaw hurry past on an upper walkway. "They let her die." "I know," her tone softened slightly, "and I am sorry, but you cannot investigate this." "The hell I cannot. You are too close. This represents a clear conflict of interest. Someone else needs to look into—" "Stand down, Elias," Steele entered her voice. "That is an order. Do not compel me to place you on administrative leave." The line went dead. Elias stared at his phone, feeling the walls of his world closing in. The system was already mobilized to protect itself, to bury this death as it had undoubtedly buried others. A nurse wheeled a transparent bassinet past him toward the elevators, likely bound for the maternity ward. Inside, a tiny form squirmed beneath soft blankets. His daughter was alive because a resident had finally found his courage. Too late to save Naomi, but in time to save their child. Elias fell into step beside the nurse, his badge ensuring no one questioned his presence. The elevator ride was silent, save for the soft sounds of newborn breathing. The maternity ward presented a cruel contrast, adorned with vibrant colors and cheerful murals. The walls were lined with photographs of jubilant families, proud parents cradling their infants, couples sharing tearful first moments. Moments Naomi would never experience. The nurse helped him settle into a rocking chair and place his daughter in his arms. She was perfection. Tiny fingers, dark curls, her mother's nose. She made small mewling sounds as she nestled against his chest. Elias held her close, breathing in that new baby scent, allowing tears to fall silently onto her blanket. In his pocket, Nurse Glenn's paper waited like a lit fuse. On the wall, a security camera watched with its unblinking eye. "I'm here," he whispered to his daughter. "Daddy's here." But Naomi wasn't, and someone would account for that. Dawn crept through Elias's kitchen windows, painting gray shadows across the linoleum floor. The baby's cries pierced the morning silence, echoing from the nursery monitor. His daughter needed him, but for a moment he couldn't move. His eyes were fixed on Naomi's yellow running shoes by the door, perfectly aligned, awaiting feet that would never again fill them. The baby's wails grew more insistent. Elias pushed himself up from the kitchen table, his joints stiff from sitting all night. The discharge papers from the hospital were spread across the wooden surface. Each page was a mockery of what had transpired. They should not exist. No one should be discharged after passing away. But here they were, delivered to his doorstep in a manila envelope. "I'm coming, baby girl," he called softly, heading to the nursery. The room still smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. Naomi had insisted on completing it herself, even at 8 months pregnant. "Your daughter needs a room filled with love," she had said, "not hired hands." He lifted his daughter from the crib, cradling her against his chest. "There you go, sweet pea. Daddy's got you." The words felt hollow without Naomi's gentle harmony beside him. He changed her diaper, warmed a bottle, and settled into the rocking chair Naomi had chosen. His phone buzzed while he was feeding the baby. An email from Gail Renshaw's office. Timestamp 5:47 a.m. The subject line read, "Confidential settlement proposal, time sensitive." "They certainly move with haste when they're apprehensive," he muttered to his daughter. She blinked up at him, her tiny hands wrapped around the bottle. Back at the kitchen table, the baby dozing in her swing, Elias spread the discharge papers out once more. The timeline did not align. According to these documents, the fetal monitor displayed normal readings until 12:45 a.m. Yet Elias distinctly recalled the alarms activating well before midnight. The nursing notes referenced routine checks during periods when Naomi had been screaming in pain. Someone had sanitized these records, meticulously editing out the evidence of neglect. But they had made errors. The timestamps on medication orders did not correspond with the electronic system logs. Notes appeared chronologically improbable. Treatments were documented prior to symptoms being recorded. A heavy knock at the door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw Detective Vince Malloy on his porch, looking casual in plain clothes with a paper coffee cup in hand. Elias opened the door, but blocked the entrance. "Detective, it is rather early." "Just checking in." Malloy's smile was practiced. "Reasonable. I heard there was some excitement at the hospital last night. Thought we should have a conversation, keep things from escalating." "There is nothing to discuss. My wife perished because a physician disregarded her symptoms." "Look," Malloy's voice lowered, friendly but firm. "I understand. You are in pain. Hargrove's reputation spans 3 decades of distinguished service. These situations unfortunately occur, particularly in high-risk pregnancies. The most constructive path forward for everyone involved is to acknowledge the reality of the situation and allow the healing process to commence." Is that the standardized explanation provided to the families of his deceased patients? Malloy's smile stiffened. "Be prudent, Agent Ward. While sorrow is understandable, allegations of that nature can create considerable complications for all parties." In the background, the broadcast voice of the television news announcer emanated from Elias's kitchen. "Esteemed obstetrician Dr. Preston Hargrove conveyed profound regret today regarding the loss of a patient during childbirth." Both men turned their attention to the screen. Hargrove stood at a lectern, his expression a carefully crafted facade of concern. "Although we are unable to disclose details of specific cases, it is essential to recognize that complications can emerge, especially in individuals with pre-existing risk factors." "The son of a..." Elias exhaled sharply. "He is attributing blame to her." "Accept the settlement," Malloy counseled. "Devote yourself to being a father to your young daughter." Certain opportunities, once presented, do not easily recede. Following Malloy's departure, Elias transformed his dining room wall into a chronological representation. Adhesive notes meticulously documented each interaction, every instance of delayed response, and every disregarded warning sign. Crimson string linked pivotal moments. Naomi's initial report of discomfort at 11:17 in the evening. Tessa's request for imaging at 11:42 in the evening. Hargrove's persistent delays culminating in the catastrophic event at 12:53 in the morning. His mobile device vibrated with an incoming text message from Tessa. "Please review your email. I am transmitting something significant. Discard after perusal." The electronic correspondence contained digitized pages extracted from prior patient records. 2 separate instances, both involving mothers of color, both succumbing under Hargrove's medical supervision within the preceding year. The established patterns were eerily consistent. Symptoms disregarded, treatment postponed, critical signals ignored until it was tragically too late. Elias added their names to his wall display. Additional crimson string was deployed, forging further connections. He retrieved his mobile device once more, navigating to a contact he seldom utilized. Assistant United States Attorney Laia Moreno answered on the 3rd ring. "This is Ward," he stated in a hushed tone. "I require an unscheduled meeting. I was informed about your wife." Moreno's voice was measured and cautious. "My sincere condolences, Elias. Can you meet?" A brief silence ensued. The diner located on 4th Street, in 1 hour. "However, Elias, if my suspicions are correct, there are established protocols that must be followed. protocols that serve to protect the influential. He surveyed his meticulously assembled wall of evidence. This situation necessitates a departure from the norm. After concluding the call, Elias stood before his visual timeline. The recurring pattern was now unequivocally apparent. It extended beyond mere negligence or prejudice. It suggested a more calculated and insidious intent. Each fatality followed an identical sequence of postponement and negation. Each individual afflicted fit the same demographic profile. He uncapped a marker and inscribed a single word at the apex of the board. Intent. The infant stirred in her suspended seat, emitting faint vocalizations indicating hunger or a need for companionship. Elias gently lifted her, inhaling the sweet, nascent aroma. "I make you a promise," he whispered against her downy hair. "They will not be able to suppress this revelation. Not this time." The stark fluorescent tubes in the hospital's record-keeping department emitted a low hum overhead as Elias and Assistant United States Attorney Lila Moreno convened at a compact desk, enveloped by towering stacks of medical documentation. The air in the room was imbued with the scent of aged paper and industrial-grade cleaning agents. "Let me be explicit," Moreno declared, her voice low and firm. "We will proceed strictly by the established regulations. No unauthorized actions, no breaches of protocol. A single misstep could jeopardize the entirety of any case we endeavor to construct." "I comprehend your instructions." Elias maintained a steady tone, though his fingers exhibited a subtle tremor as he perused the access logs. "Do you truly comprehend?" Moreno leaned forward. "Because grief can render individuals reckless, and recklessness leads to the dismissal of cases." Elias was poised to reply when his attention was captured by a particular detail. He accessed the electronic timestamp records for Naomi's patient file. Observe this anomaly. Multiple modifications were registered at precisely 1:47 in the morning, less than 60 minutes subsequent to her demise. Moreno adjusted her reading spectacles. This could simply be routine administrative updates at that hour by the Information Technology Department. Elias indicated the user identification code. For what reason would technical support require access immediately following a patient's death? They delved further into the logs. Modifications, erasures, entire passages were fundamentally altered, all occurring within those critical early morning hours when Elias's profound sorrow had impeded his professional judgment. "Someone meticulously cleaned this up with remarkable speed," Moreno murmured. "Far too expeditiously for standard procedural measures." A fleeting shadow passed across the frosted glass of the door. Elias tensed, but the movement continued beyond. "We must depart," he stated quietly. "We have lingered here for an excessive duration." They gathered their notes and proceeded toward the parking structure. The afternoon sun cast elongated shadows amidst the concrete support columns. Their footsteps reverberated within the desolate expanse. "Agent Ward," a sharp voice pierced the air. Two hospital security personnel emerged from behind a structural column. Both were attired in dark uniforms adorned with tactical vests. An excessive deployment for mere hospital security. "May I be of assistance?" Elias maintained a neutral demeanor. Adjacent to him, Moreno clutched her briefcase with increased force. "We require you to accompany us," the larger of the two guards stated. "Ms. Renshaw wishes to discuss your unauthorized access to medical records." "I possess the requisite clearance." Elias subtly shifted his stance, assessing their positions. "Any concerns can be addressed through official channels." The second guard advanced to flank them. "This is not a request." "Assistant United States Attorney Moreno," Elias declared calmly, "please return to your vehicle." "Elias, now." Moreno hesitated before walking briskly toward her car. The guards permitted her passage. "One final opportunity," the first guard asserted. "Come with us willingly." "I am a federal agent," Elias responded. "You are obstructing an official investigation." The guard's reply was a forceful shove that sent Elias staggering backward. However, Elias had anticipated such a confrontation. He absorbed the impact, utilizing the generated momentum to execute a pivot within the guard's reach. His elbow struck the man's solar plexus with precise, debilitating force. As the guard doubled over in pain, Elias ensnared his extended arm and redirected him, causing him to impact face first against the concrete pillar. The second guard lunged forward. Elias dropped into a low crouch, executing a sweeping leg maneuver. They collided with the ground simultaneously. The guard possessed greater physical strength, but Elias had accumulated years of dedicated training. He secured the man's arm in a restraining hold, applying pressure until the guard became unresponsive. The entire encounter transpired in under 20 seconds. Both guards were incapacitated, conscious but neutralized. No permanent injuries, no excessive force utilized. A clean and contained resolution. Something clattered across the floor, a plastic identification badge that had dislodged from the first guard's pocket. Elias retrieved it. It was a contractor badge identifying him as affiliated with MediaTek IT services. My God, Elias. Moreno hurried back, her heels echoing on the concrete. What have you done? I defended myself. He presented the badge. Does this appear familiar? The same contractor identification as indicated in the system access logs. It cannot be. She halted, her gaze fixed on the badge. Why would hospital IT personnel be acting as security personnel? Because they are not IT personnel. Elias stood, smoothing his jacket. They are intermediaries, brought in to resolve problematic situations, both digital and physical. Agent Ward? The sharp voice of Senior Assistant Chief Elias Danaklen cut through the cavernous space of the garage. She advanced towards them, flanked by 2 FBI agents. Her countenance was etched with unyielding resolve. Cease your actions immediately. Ma'am, your badge. She extended her hand. Now these individuals physically assaulted a federal agent, Moreno interjected. That constitutes a severe. What I observe, Klein interrupted, is an agent experiencing emotional distress who physically attacked hospital security personnel following unauthorized access to restricted files. She turned her gaze toward Elias. Your badge and credentials. You are suspended pending a comprehensive review. Elias removed his badge and identification card, placing them into Klein's outstretched palm. His fingers felt unnaturally cold. Clear out your workspace by the conclusion of the day, Klein commanded, and maintain your distance from this medical facility. Later that afternoon, Elias occupied his home office, his gaze fixed upon his vacant badge holder. His mobile device vibrated. A text message arrived from Nurse Tessa. Alarms for patient monitoring require manual intervention, a dual-step procedure, and cannot be triggered inadvertently. He incorporated this crucial detail into his accumulating evidence board, establishing a linkage to the contractor identification and the system access logs. The overarching pattern was progressively becoming clearer. An elaborate system had been devised to systematically erase the occurrences of death, not merely to conceal them retrospectively, but to ensure their perpetration from the outset. Elias opened his desk drawer and carefully placed his empty badge holder within. The drawer closed with a soft, final click. He stood contemplating his wall of interconnected evidence. They had confiscated his badge, stripped him of his authority, and nullified his official capacity to investigate. But they had failed to divest him of his rigorous training, his accumulated knowledge, and his unwavering resolve to expose the truth. Furthermore, they had not managed to extinguish his profound sense of loss. Elias retrieved his mobile device and initiated a series of calls. He possessed alternative resources, different investigative avenues, and various other means to construct a compelling case. They erroneously believed that confiscating his badge would bring his efforts to a halt. They were mistaken. It merely signified that he was no longer obligated to adhere to their established rules of engagement. Morning sunlight streamed through the grimy panes of Pete's diner. casting elongated shadows across the worn vinyl of the booth. He was positioned with his back to the wall, discreetly observing the entrance while feigning absorption in the laminated menu. His coffee had grown cold, untouched. The bell above the doorway chimed. A middle-aged African-American couple entered the establishment. The woman's eyes bore the unmistakable marks of exhaustion. The man's shoulders were stooped, burdened by a familiar weight. Elias recognized the distinct demeanor of parents who had interred a child. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, Elias rose, extending his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Call me Marcus, Mr. Holloway replied, sliding into the booth. His wife Sandra settled beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Our daughter Jasmine, Sandra began, then paused, swallowing with evident difficulty. She was 24 years old, her first child. The waitress approached, but Elias conveyed a gentle smile, indicating she was not required. He withdrew a small notebook, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. Please recount the events of the day you brought her to the hospital, he inquired softly. Marcus's jaw clenched. She was experiencing pain, severe pain, not typical contractions. We arrived approximately at 9 in the evening. They compelled us to wait. Dr. Hargrove? Elias inquired. Sandra nodded. He repeatedly asserted she was exaggerating. He attributed it to anxiety. He stated that young mothers frequently do. Her voice faltered. Frequently overstate their symptoms. Those were his precise words. Elias probed gently. As if reading from a script, Marcus growled. He spoke condescendingly to her, as though she were unintelligent. He consistently maintained that everything was perfectly normal and that we needed to place our trust in the process. Elias's pen moved with steady deliberation across the page. What transpired when her condition worsened? Sandra's fingers twisted together. The nurse, she understood something was amiss and continuously monitored the readings, but Hargrove refused to heed her concerns. He insisted that Jasmine needed to calm down and cease being dramatic. He placed us in a corridor, Marcus continued, his voice devoid of emotion. He claimed all the delivery rooms were occupied, yet we observed unoccupied ones. We saw, he faltered, pressing his fist to his mouth. By the time they finally transferred her, Sandra whispered, it was regrettably too late. They informed us, they stated, it was a recognized complication that occasionally these occurrences are unavoidable. Elias's phone buzzed. A text message arrived from an unfamiliar number. Need to discuss. Billing irregularities. Not secure to converse by phone. Beneath it, an email address signed P.S. He turned his attention back to the Holloways. Did they extend the settlement offer to you? Marcus nodded grimly. The subsequent day, documents filled with complex terminology. They suggested that signing would serve as an honorable tribute to Jasmine's memory. Did you sign? We were left with no alternative, Sandra whispered. The funeral expenses. Elias's pen momentarily ceased its motion. Did Detective Malloy visit you? They both stiffened. How did you know? Marcus began. He advised us to be reasonable, Sandra interjected. He stated that pursuing legal action would only inflict further distress upon families in similar circumstances. Elias meticulously documented these revelations onto his expanding network map. The interconnected pattern was becoming increasingly evident. Identification of vulnerable patients, deliberate postponement of medical care, falsification of complications in records, expedited settlement agreements, and pressure exerted by law enforcement. A systematic mechanism designed to transform tragic deaths into mere statistical data. His phone buzzed once more. An email from Priya Sharma, marked as urgent, discovered a pattern in billing codes related to risk management classifications. Disproportionate outcomes. Requires a confidential meeting. The diner's bell chimed. Two individuals in dark jackets entered, their gazes scanning the room. Elias recognized the unmistakable predatory bearing of hired operatives. "We should conclude our discussion," he stated quietly. "Utilize separate exits. Do not look back." The Holloways discreetly departed through the side door, while Elias left cash on the table. He exited via the kitchen, offering a nod of gratitude to the cook who had been observing the unfolding situation. That evening, Elias sat in his home office, meticulously connecting the threads on his evidence board. Hospital records, sworn testimonies, billing codes, all constituent parts of a larger puzzle revealing systemic negligence concealed by bureaucratic documentation. His son slept soundly in the bassinet beside his desk. A sharp, percussive sound from outside jolted him alert. Through the window, he detected a fleeting movement near Naomi's vehicle, still parked in the driveway where she had last left it. The distinct odor reached him first: gasoline. Elias burst through the front door just as a figure clad in dark attire raised a lighter. He covered the distance in 3 swift strides, tackling the individual before the flame could be ignited. They impacted the concrete with considerable force. The assailant proved formidable, exhibiting trained combat proficiency. An elbow struck Elias's ribs. A knee drove upward toward his groin. However, Elias was propelled by a righteous fury, a controlled, focused rage that rendered his retaliatory strikes precise and devastating. They grappled on the damp grass. Elias secured the attacker's arm, twisting it until an audible pop ensued. A pained grunt escaped the assailant. Male. The individual thrashed, attempting to dislodge Elias. His jacket rode up, revealing a familiar identification card clipped to his belt. Municipal Maintenance Department. Headlights illuminated the scene as a police cruiser arrived. Detective Malloy emerged, proceeding with deliberate slowness. "Is everything satisfactory here, Agent Ward?" Malloy's voice was laced with feigned concern. "Neighbors reported a disturbance. This individual was attempting arson," Elias stated, maintaining his hold. "I apprehended him in the act of attempting to set fire to my wife's vehicle." "It appears to me that you are assaulting a city employee." Malloy offered a thin, sardonic smile. "Allow him to rise. You are overlooking the gasoline container situated right there." "What gasoline container?" Malloy discreetly kicked the receptacle beneath a nearby shrub. "You are creating adversaries, Ward. Dangerous adversaries. Exercise good judgment. Concentrate on your child rather than pursuing phantoms." The attacker scrambled to his feet once Elias released him, limping towards a dark SUV that had materialized silently at the curb. Malloy observed its departure before turning his attention back to Elias. "Next time we are summoned to this location," he stated softly, "matters may not conclude so cleanly." Following their departure, Elias proceeded to install security cameras at every perimeter point of the residence. He supplemented these with motion sensors, upgraded the door locks, and reinforced the windows. In his son's nursery, he mounted a camera with a direct feed transmitted to his mobile device. That night, he lay on the floor beside the crib, his service weapon within immediate reach. Above him, his son slept soundly, blissfully unaware of the converging forces that surrounded them. Unaware that his father was meticulously constructing a bulwark of evidence and surveillance to shield him from those who had claimed his mother. Elias gently touched the bars of the crib, feeling the smooth, polished wood beneath his fingertips. "I am here for you," he whispered. "They will not harm anyone else. I promise." The derelict storage facility loomed against the midnight sky, a monolithic silhouette of corrugated metal and shattered windows. Elias maneuvered his vehicle behind a corroded shipping container, silencing the engine. His breath condensed into visible mist in the frigid air as he waited, observing. A familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Ray Razor Delaney, his leather jacket collar turned upward against the biting wind. The former criminal informant moved with the wary agility of someone accustomed to constant vigilance. "You've become a difficult individual to locate these days, Fed," Razor remarked, maintaining a deliberate distance until he had thoroughly surveyed the surroundings. "I am not a federal agent at this juncture," Elias replied. "My badge is currently suspended." Razor's laughter was sharp and devoid of amusement. "That's precisely what makes this situation intriguing. You are soliciting favors when you possess nothing to offer in return. I still retain contacts within the system. Assistance is available, provided the information proves substantial." "Assistance?" Razor shook his head. "Man, you possess no comprehension of the forces you are provoking. These individuals, they wield considerable influence. You would scarcely believe it." Elias moved closer, his voice low and imbued with intense conviction. "They murdered my wife, Razor, while I was a witness. Tell me what you know." Something in his tone prompted Razor to scrutinize him more intently. After a protracted interval, the informant nodded. "Follow me. However, should anyone inquire, this conversation never occurred." They navigated through a labyrinth of storage units until they arrived at an unassuming doorway marked Maintenance. Within, archaic fluorescent lights flickered intermittently over rows of servers, their low hum emanating from climate-controlled racks. "The hospital's clandestine secret," Razor explained, gesturing towards the equipment. "When they require records to vanish during routine system migrations, this is where the true data resides. I performed some contractual work for their IT department. Discreetly, of course." "Who possesses access?" "That's the ingenious aspect," Razor commented, retrieving his mobile device. "They erroneously believe they have expunged the login records." But he presented Elias with a screenshot displaying access timestamps. "I maintain backups. Observe these entries. Immediately following your wife's incident, show me everything." Elias interrupted. For the ensuing hour, Razor guided him through the hospital's clandestine digital infrastructure, detailing the methods by which records were manipulated, the locations where original documents were preserved, and the administrators who held privileged access. The names and timestamps corresponded precisely with Elias's established timeline. "This evidence is sufficient to commence the construction of a case," Elias stated. "However, I require copies." Already anticipated, Razor handed over a compact hard drive. "But listen, this extends beyond the confines of the hospital. I have encountered municipal accounts, police records, judicial signatures. They have established an extensive network. I can provide you with protection," Elias pledged. "Although I am suspended, I have an assistant United States attorney." "Who?" His phone buzzed. A text message from Moreno. "A limited surveillance warrant has been secured. 48 hours only. Utilize it judiciously." Before he could formulate a response, another message flashed across his screen. This one originated from an anonymous number. "Nurse Glenn found unconscious at her residence. Memorial Hospital emergency room." "I must depart," Elias stated sharply. "Remain discreet. I will establish contact through our customary channels. Be vigilant," Razor called out as Elias departed. "They have a strong aversion to loose ends." Elias disregarded every speed restriction en route to Memorial Hospital. He found Tessa Glenn in the emergency room, visibly bruised and barely conscious. Her residence had been subjected to a burglary. Nothing was pilfered except her mobile phone and laptop. It was not a random act. She managed to whisper when she saw him. Two individuals who knew precisely what they were seeking. "Did you recognize them?" She attempted to shake her head, but winced. Professionals. They were meticulous in avoiding any identification. Her eyes fluttered closed as the sedative took effect. Detective Malloy was already present, leaning against the nurse's station with an air of calculated nonchalance. "A regrettable incident," he drawled upon observing Elias. "The city is becoming increasingly perilous. Even affluent neighborhoods are no longer secure." "Cease the pretense," Elias growled. "We are both acutely aware of the nature of the situation." "Exercise caution, Ward." Malloy's veneer of amiability faltered for a fleeting instant. "Suspended agents should refrain from interfering with ongoing investigations. Unfortunate circumstances often arise when individuals fail to mind their own affairs. Is that what transpired with my wife? She did not mind her own business. Your wife experienced complications. A tragedy, but a natural one, unlike certain other recent occurrences." Malloy straightened his jacket. "Consider your child, Ward. Some losses are irreversible." Elias watched him depart, a cold, burning fury igniting within his chest. His phone vibrated once more. "Laya, I have been granted 48 hours of surveillance authorization," she stated without preamble. "That is the extent of it. Make it count." "I require additional time." "You need to exercise extreme caution," she countered. "They are conveying messages, Elias. First the vehicle, and now Nurse Glenn. Their actions are escalating." "Then we must accelerate our efforts." Elias detailed the information Razor had provided. "The evidence is demonstrably present, Laya. We simply need to acquire it through lawful means. Evidence will be of little assistance if you are deceased, or if someone else sustains harm due to your excessive pursuit." Elias gazed through the window at Tessa's unconscious form. She had attempted to assist, to do what was right, much like Naomi had endeavored to advocate for herself. The system's response was identical. Swift, brutal silencing. "No one else will suffer harm," he stated quietly. "I solemnly swear it." "How can you offer such a guarantee?" "Because I am no longer willing to adhere to their established rules." He touched the hard drive concealed within his pocket. "They intend to send messages. Very well, let us reciprocate." "Elias, 48 hours." He interrupted her. "That is all the time I require. Have a team prepared." He terminated the call and returned to Tessa's room. A nurse was adjusting her intravenous drip, examining the contusions blossoming across her face and neck. "I am deeply sorry," he whispered to her motionless form. "This will conclude now. No one else will bear the consequences of their transgressions." Through the window, the first light of dawn was breaking over the cityscape. Somewhere in the muted light, Hargrove Grove was likely slumbering. Malloy was fabricating deceptive reports, while the hospital's leadership concocted their next deception. They harbored the misguided belief that fear and brutality would perpetually safeguard their established order. Their conviction was unfounded. In a mere 48 hours, Elias would unequivocally demonstrate their error. He could only hope the cost would not necessitate more innocent lives. The polished marble floors of the federal courthouse amplified the sound of Elias's footsteps with each stride. Morning sunlight pierced through the expansive windows, casting elongated silhouettes across the vacant corridor where Ausa Lila Moreno had arranged documents upon a wooden bench. "These figures are irrefutable," Priya Shah articulated, her fingers quivering as she indicated the underscored portions of the financial ledgers. "Observe these monetary movements. Each occurrence of a maternal fatality under Harov's care coincides with donations channeled through intermediary companies to Judge Pritchard's favored philanthropic organizations." Moreno acknowledged this with a nod, diligently recording observations. Furthermore, the timing aligns perfectly with Detective Malloy's overtime authorizations and special assignments. Additionally, Priya interjected, producing another spreadsheet, Gail Renshaw receives consultancy fees from precisely these same intermediary firms. It's all interconnected. The delays, the fatalities, the subsequent cover-ups. They are profiting from this tragedy. Elias meticulously examined the evidential paper trail they had compiled. "Precisely how many deaths are we accounting for?" he inquired. "I have verified 8 instances over a 3-year period," Priya responded. "All involved women of color, all exhibiting similar patterns of delayed medical intervention and falsified documentation." 8 families, Elias repeated, the weight of Naomi's memory settling upon him. 8 lives they callously discarded. Moreno began composing legal summonses, her pen moving with an unwavering resolve. "We will initiate action against all of them simultaneously. Hospital records, financial statements, surveillance footage, everything. No prior notification, affording them no opportunity to conceal evidence." For the first time in weeks, Elias felt a flicker of optimism rekindle. The disparate pieces were finally coalescing. They possessed irrefutable evidence of the conspiracy, documented proof of the illicit financial transactions, witnesses prepared to come forward. His mobile device vibrated. A news alert appeared. The Pope had passed away. As he read the hospital's official statement, it read, "Due to scheduled system enhancements and server relocation, certain surveillance recordings from the preceding quarter may be temporarily inaccessible. They are actively destroying evidence," he declared, displaying the screen to Moreno. "We anticipated this," she stated calmly. "That is precisely why we—" His phone vibrated again. Another news alert, this one causing his hands to tremble. Sources suggest that a toxicology report indicates the presence of substances in the deceased mother's system. "That is a fabrication," he stated vehemently. "Naomi never— They are attempting to tarnish her reputation." "They are fearful," Priya observed quietly. "They recognize our proximity." Moreno's phone rang. Her expression turned grave as she listened. "What do you mean?" "Challenged?" she repeated, incredulous. "The subpoenas are in order." She began pacing the hallway, engaged in a heated discussion with the unseen caller. "No, Your Honor, there is no conflict of—" "Yes, I comprehend, but—" She concluded the call, her demeanor somber. "Judge Pritchard is interdicting our subpoenas. He claims insufficient grounds and potential conflicts of interest stemming from your suspension." "He is complicit," Elias asserted. "We have the proof directly before us. Proof we cannot legally utilize until these subpoenas are approved, and any judge we approach will be aware of Pritchard's prior denial." Priya gathered her documents, her hands shaking. "I should depart. If they discover I am communicating with you—" "We will ensure your protection," Moreno assured her. "Much like you protected Nurse Glenn." Priya's voice was laced with bitterness. "They institutionalize her for attempting to assist. What do you imagine they will do to me?" Neither Elias nor Moreno possessed an immediate answer. They watched her depart with haste, her gaze constantly sweeping over her shoulder with each step. Approximately 1 hour later, Elias stood before Naomi's final resting place. The hope that had dawned that morning had dissolved into a bitter taste. Fresh floral arrangements marked her interment. Roses, a gesture from her mother, who still contacted him daily to inquire about the infant. "I am so sorry," he whispered to the headstone. "They are interring the truth, much like they interred you, fabricating guilt where you were the victim." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the adjacent trees. In the distance, the drone of a groundskeeper's lawnmower could be faintly heard. "I attempted to navigate this through the proper channels," he continued, adhering to protocol, showing respect for the established system. "But they own the system. They wield it as a weapon." He touched the cold marble. "You deserved so much more. Those other mothers deserved more. And that arrogant scoundrel Harrove continues his practice, still dictating who lives and dies based on their complexion." A strategy began to form in his mind, a dangerous, likely unlawful, but they had left him no alternative. He retrieved his mobile device and contacted Moreno. "I require a favor." "Elias, just listen. We understand Harrov's established pattern. We know his modus operandi. What if we provided him with another opportunity to expose his true nature?" "What are you proposing?" "A decoy patient. Someone presenting with the identical symptoms Naomi exhibited. Someone equipped with audio recording devices. That constitutes entrapment. It's providing him with the means for his own downfall. He is presumptuous, Leia. He believes himself beyond reproach. Present him with another black woman exhibiting similar complaints, and he will inevitably act precisely as he did with Naomi." "Even if I were inclined to assist," Moreno stated, "we would require official authorization for any recording. And following Pritchard's ruling, we must then resort to creative measures. Find a sympathetic judge, call in favors, something of that nature." His voice took on a harder edge. "Because at this very moment, he is in that hospital, likely preparing to inflict harm upon someone else's wife, someone else's mother, and we are allowing it." A tense silence ensued. Finally, Moreno sighed. "Grant me 24 hours. But Elias, if we proceed with this, it must be executed flawlessly. Adhere strictly to the plan. One misstep and they will obliterate everything. They already attempted to obliterate Naomi. They will not succeed in burying the truth." He ended the call and cast one last glance at the grave. Hargrove believed his standing and connections rendered him impervious. That very arrogance would prove to be his undoing. All they needed to do was grant him another chance to reveal his true self. The lawnmower's drone receded. The wind scattered rose petals from Naomi's grave across the lawn. Somewhere within the urban sprawl, Hargrove was undoubtedly reviewing patient charts, deciding whose suffering held significance and whose did not. Soon, he would have another opportunity to make such a determination. And this time, every utterance, every dismissal, every cruel calculation would be meticulously documented. The air conditioning unit in the surveillance van hummed softly as Elias observed Simone Brooks approaching the hospital entrance across multiple camera feeds. She moved with a deliberate grace, one hand placed gently against her abdomen, her expression conveying the precise degree of distress. "Audio check," Moreno's voice transmitted through his earpiece. "Receiving clearly," he confirmed, adjusting the audio levels. Every subtle sound from the diminutive microphone concealed within Simone's attire registered with exceptional fidelity. Simone entered the emergency room, her performance impeccable, neither overly theatrical nor understated, simply a concerned, expectant mother seeking assistance. Precisely as Naomi had been. The waiting area buzzed with the typical afternoon clamor. A child's cry, a cough from an unseen patron. Telephones rang at the intake desk. "I need help," Simone conveyed to the triage nurse, her voice perfectly modulated with a tremor. "Something is wrong. The pain, it's not normal." Elias's grip tightened on the monitoring equipment. The identical phrases, the same palpable fear. He forced himself to regulate his breathing. "Blood pressure elevated," a nurse noted, registering 160/95, precisely mirroring Naomi's readings. Simone was transported to an examination area. Through her concealed microphone, Elias could discern every sound: the rhythmic beeping of medical devices, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes, the low murmur of voices discussing the doctor on duty. "Dr. Harrove is handling OB emergencies today," someone stated. "Patient presenting with severe abdominal pain at 32 weeks, another voice reported. Complaining of visual disturbances and dizziness." Elias glanced at Moreno, who was meticulously transcribing every detail. They had strategically selected the symptoms, mirroring Naomi's condition while ensuring Simone remained free from genuine peril. Dr. Aidan Park was the first to appear, the resident physician who had been present on the night of Naomi's death. His hesitation was discernible even through the low-resolution security footage. Let's initiate a comprehensive workup, Park stated, his voice clear. The current blood pressure is concerning. We should proceed immediately. Now, Harrov's distinctive voice interjected, cutting through the air. Let us avoid overreaction. Elias's jaw clenched as Harrov entered the scene, exuding an identical aura of dismissive self-assurance as he had with Naomi. Good afternoon, Harrov addressed Simone. I understand you are experiencing some anxiety. The pain, Simone responded. It feels as though something is staring and my vision is impaired. Everything is indistinct. Harrov's tone was dripping with condescension. Your first pregnancy, is it not? Yes, but this is not typical. Something is amiss. Pain tolerance varies significantly across diverse demographics. Harrov continued. What you are experiencing is likely stress-related. In the van, Moreno's pen scratched furiously across her notepad. Each word represented another incriminating piece of evidence against Harrov. Her pressure is still escalating, Park interjected. Protocol suggests... Thank you, Dr. Park. I am quite capable of assessing the situation, Harrov interrupted. Gail Renshaw materialized at the nurse's station, her presence serving as a silent admonition to the staff. Through various cameras, Elias observed her subtle gestures, directing patient flow, managing perceptions, and safeguarding the institutional integrity. Please, Simone implored, can you not conduct some tests, an ultrasound? Perhaps, Harrov conceded, let us refrain from expending resources. Some quiet rest will prove more beneficial than unnecessary imaging. Park shifted uncomfortably. Sir, given the symptoms and vital signs, we should at least... Dr. Park, Harrov's voice sharpened.
Perhaps you require a brief refresher on proper assessment procedures. We cannot authorize expensive diagnostic tests every time a patient exhibits emotional distress. The exchange crackled through their headsets with pristine clarity. Moreno underlined a phrase in her notes. Blood pressure now 170/100, a nurse announced. Park straightened his posture. With all due respect, Dr. Hargrove, elevated blood pressure coupled with visual disturbances necessitates immediate evaluation. I am ordering a protein test and an ultrasound. Absolutely not, Hargrove retorted. I will not permit my authority to be challenged by... It is protocol. Park insisted, his voice now louder. I am documenting my recommendation. The word documenting instantly altered Hargrove's demeanor. He was acutely aware of the power inherent in written records. Very well, he stated tightly. Proceed with your tests. Expend time and resources, but kindly note that I consider this an excessive reaction to standard discomfort. Within the van, Moreno looked up from her notes. He is repeating the exact sequence of events, dismissing symptoms, refusing tests, meticulously documenting his objections to shield himself, all while propagating the underlying racist subtext that black women exaggerate pain, Elias added somberly. Through the monitors, they observed Park efficiently arranging the diagnostic tests he had insisted upon. Simone maintained her role perfectly, appearing concerned yet compliant, insistent but not confrontational. Your blood pressure remains elevated, Park informed her. However, the initial tests appear reassuring. We will monitor you closely. Such drama for naught, Hargrove commented, his voice audible enough for the microphone to capture. As I stated, anxiety manifests differently within certain demographic groups. Perhaps some educational guidance on proper prenatal care would be beneficial. The condescension in his voice caused Elias's hands to clench into fists, but the surge of anger was tempered by a sense of satisfaction. Every word spoken was another crucial piece of evidence. Patient appears stable, Park stated cautiously. However, I am admitting her for observation. At your own discretion, Hargrove replied. Please document that I advised against unnecessary admission. Oh, I will document everything, Park assured him, his implied meaning evident to all present except Hargrove.
Gail Renshaw drifted closer, her practiced smile masking any semblance of concern. "Dr. Hargrove, may I have a brief word regarding resource allocation?" "Of course," Hargrove replied. "Someone must maintain the established standards." Their voices receded as they moved away from Simone's bedside, but the microphone captured their departing conversation.
These individuals need to understand they cannot demand preferential treatment every time they... Moreno decisively clicked her pen and turned to Elias. Her eyes were alight with conviction. "He has just confessed," she stated quietly. "Not merely to this instance, but to all of it. The pattern, the prejudice, the deliberate denial of care. We have him secured." The harsh glare of the garage light cast stark shadows across the evidence wall as Elias gently swayed. His sleeping infant was nestled against his chest. Hargrove's recorded voice emanated from a small speaker, each syllable imbued with casual malevolence. "These individuals need to understand. They cannot demand preferential treatment." Elias depressed a button, rewinding the audio clip. He had listened to it 17 times, imprinting every inflection, every pause that betrayed the doctor's true disposition. The wall before him resembled a complex spiderweb of interconnected data featuring chronologically ordered photographs, financial records, and transcribed threads. Crimson threads linked critical events, forming a noose that would finally bring an end to Harrow's reign of neglect. The baby stirred, tiny fingers clutching Elias's shirt. He adjusted the blanket, recalling how Naomi used to hum softly while folding these very same delicate fabrics, preparing for a future that Harrow had irrevocably stolen. His phone vibrated. Moreno's text message was concise. "Subpoenas drafted, filing at dawn." A car door slammed outside. Through the garage window, Elias identified Detective Malaloy's nondescript Crown Victoria idling at the curb. He secured his child in the portable bassinet positioned behind his desk and deactivated the audio playback. The doorbell chimed. Elias deliberately delayed his response, allowing Malaloy to remain exposed to the chill of the night air.
"Good evening, Agent Ward," Malaloy stated upon the door's eventual opening. His smile was practiced, professional, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Do you have a moment for a brief discussion?" "No warrant, no discussion," Elias responded curtly. "Come now." Malaloy's tone remained affable, but his posture subtly shifted, a cop's instinct to assert dominance. "I am merely looking out for your interests here, a professional courtesy." "There is nothing professional about this visit." "Listen," Malaloy stepped closer, abandoning the pretense. "You are provoking sensitive issues unnecessarily, creating ripples that could engulf more than just Harrow. Exercise prudence. Consider your child." Elias felt an icy sensation crystallize in his veins. "Are you issuing a threat to my child, detective?" "Certainly not," Malaloy spread his hands. "I am merely observing. Life is unpredictable. Accidents occur. Sometimes something permanent alters everything. It would be most unfortunate if your crusade left that infant without both parents." Elias remained stoic. "You are hereby formally notified that this conversation is being recorded as evidence of attempted witness intimidation, pursuant to Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. Section 1512B. Would you care to amend your statement?" Malaloy's smile vanished. "You believe yourself to be exceptionally clever? You believe your badge offers you protection? This situation is far beyond your comprehension." "No," Elias stated quietly. "It is precisely as I comprehend it. That is what instills fear in you." Malaloy retreated to his vehicle without uttering another word. Elias watched until the taillights disappeared around the bend, then meticulously reviewed his home security feeds. All cameras were operational, all vantage points covered. His phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Moreno,
her voice taut with suppressed indignation. Pritchard has just issued an emergency injunction. He's blocking our subpoenas on procedural grounds. For how long? A minimum of 3 days for a hearing. In the interim, Renshaw's legal team is inundating us with paperwork. A motion to dismiss, a motion to suppress, a motion to seal. They are attempting to drown us in bureaucratic red tape until the momentum dissipates. Elias surveyed his evidence wall. They are unnerved, and justifiably so, but they are also interconnected. Each delay grants them additional time to further conceal evidence. Then we alter the strategy. Elias retrieved his secondary mobile device, the one directly linked to the bureau. It is time to contact Clean. Special Agent in Charge Dana Clean responded on the second ring. Ward, you remain suspended. I require 5 minutes. After that, you are welcome to extend my suspension or place me under arrest. Your decision. A prolonged pause ensued. Speak concisely. Elias presented the information systematically. The pattern of fatalities, the intricate financial associations, the coordinated suppression of truth. He detailed Malaloy's intimidation tactics, Pritchard's obstructionist maneuvers, and Renshaw's legal entrenchment. Finally, he played Harrove's recorded confession. This is no longer solely about Naomi, he concluded. It concerns a system that perpetuates the demise of black mothers for financial gain and silences anyone who dares to object. The Bureau cannot remain indifferent without becoming complicit. The silence stretched. Elias could almost perceive Clen weighing career preservation against moral imperative. Transmit all evidence to me, she stated finally. Every recording, every document, every discernible connection. I will escalate it internally. Federal jurisdiction with no local involvement. However, Ward, if you are mistaken about any aspect of this, I will not be, and I possess backups of everything. Of course you do. Clen sighed audibly. Remain in your current location. Await official authorization. Do not engage with anyone until we initiate action. Understood. Elias concluded the call and turned back to his evidence wall. He photographed every document, scanned every note, and uploaded every recording to secure servers, employing multiple redundant copies and locations, eliminating any single point of failure. The baby whimpered softly. Elias lifted his child, inhaling the comforting scent of a newborn. I understand, little one, he whispered. I miss her too. But tomorrow we begin to rectify this. He settled into the antique rocking chair Naomi had selected, observing the security feeds while his child slept peacefully. Outside, the night deepened. Elias, however, did not sleep. He simply rocked, waited, and recalled Naomi's smile as dawn approached. Every few minutes, his phone illuminated with additional notifications. Renshaw's attorneys filing motions, Malaloy's vehicle circling the block, Pritchard's office requesting urgent meetings with federal supervisors. The established order was in disarray, desperately attempting to retain control. Let them scramble, Elias mused. The truth is already in motion. No amount of legal filings or clandestine agreements can recapture it. The armored vehicles hummed in the pre-dawn gloom, their dark silhouettes arrayed like predators lying in wait. Condensation beaded on the bulletproof glass as agents moved with practiced efficiency, verifying equipment and synchronizing communication protocols. The staging area, a repurposed warehouse lot, was equipped with extensive tactical gear and bore the unmistakable insignia of federal authority. Special Agent in Charge Dana Clean stood with resolute posture near the command vehicle, her expression set like stone. As Elias approached, she presented him with his badge without ceremony. Agent Ward, she stated formally, you are hereby reinstated to active duty, effective immediately. She paused, then added in a hushed tone, the Bureau failed you. We should have intervened sooner. Elias accepted his credentials, their familiar weight settling against his chest like protective armor. Thank you, ma'am. Do not thank me, Clenny's eyes hardened. Ensure it counts. Within the command vehicle, Elias's evidence board had been meticulously recreated digitally across numerous screens. Red markers highlighted target locations while timestamps scrolled by in real time. USA. Auza Lila Moreno occupied the communications station, coordinating with supporting teams. Teams are in position, she reported, her gaze fixed on her monitors. Priya is currently providing us with server locations. Elias studied the tactical overlay. 7 primary objectives. The hospital's off-site archival facility, 3 billing vendor offices, the administrative headquarters, and the private residences belonging to Harrove and Renshaw. Each location represented the crucial component of the intricate puzzle they had fought so diligently to assemble. All teams acknowledge status, Clenny commanded. The responses came in rapid succession. Alpha team ready at storage facility. Bravo team positioned at billing office 1. Charlie team covering hospital approach. Delta team. Elias observed the pieces aligning, recalling the countless nights he had spent meticulously connecting these very same dots while his infant slept soundly nearby. Now, the full force of federal law enforcement stood poised to validate every conclusion, every suspicion, every truth he had vigilantly guarded. Priya Shah's voice crackled through the secure communication channels. Primary server room confirmed in sub-basement. Backup arrays located in offices 3 and 4. They are executing continuous purge cycles, attempting to erase all data. Too late for that, Moreno muttered, initiating commands on her terminal. Mirroring programs are already deployed. Every erasure generates a recoverable archive. The nascent dawn's light painted the heavens with hues of hope as Clean issued the authorization. Throughout the metropolis, federal operatives moved with unified intent. Entryways were breached. Warrants were executed. Pertinent information was secured. Live visual feeds populated the central displays. At the repository, agents unearthed recently macerated documentation, but the fragments remained reassemblable. Within the fiscal departments, computer systems whirred with active data eradication utilities that solely served to preserve further evidence of culpability. At Renshaw's residence, a hastily ignited conflagration in the rear garden still smoldered. Partially combusted papers bearing patient designations fluttered in the morning zephyr. The initial retrieval of visual data is imminent, announced a digital forensic specialist. The temporal marker precisely corresponds with Nurse Glenn's notation. Elias inclined forward as hospital surveillance imagery occupied the primary screen. The visuals were exceptionally clear. Hargrove was observed surreptitiously disabling alarms, disregarding staff apprehensions, and postponing urgent medical interventions. Each captured moment corroborated Tessa's bravery in coming forward. Each passing second of video transmuted recollection into verifiable proof. Have the access logs been retrieved? Another analyst inquired. Numerous unauthorized disengagements of monitoring apparatus, all linked to Hargrove's authentication credentials. The established pattern spans 3 years, primarily targets ethnic minority patients, and aligns with adjustments in billing. Subsequently, additional information flooded in. Financial statements revealed capital transfers between shell corporations associated with hospital executives and local public servants. Electronic mail correspondences illuminated deliberate orchestration to suppress grievances and silence informants. Every apprehension Elias harbored, every fragment he had meticulously assembled through sorrow and resolve, was now being substantiated with high-fidelity precision. "Sir," a junior agent approached, presenting a tablet. "You ought to observe this." The display depicted surveillance footage from Tessa Glenn's burglary. Unambiguous images of 2 men, one adorned with a contractor insignia identical to those discovered in the hospital parking structure, executing a forced entry and assaulting her. There was no indication of larceny, only aggression intended for intimidation. "A facial recognition scan is already underway," the agent stated. We have identified one perpetrator as a former law enforcement officer presently employed by a security enterprise contracted by the hospital. Elias nodded, unsurprised. The system fortified itself through layers of deniable associations until those strata were systematically dismantled. Teams report evidence secured at all designated primary sites. Cleni declared no erasures were successful. No data has been lost. Morena looked up from her console. A fierce sense of vindication gleamed in her eyes. They truly believed they could conceal this. All of it. Everyone they harmed, everyone they silenced. They grew accustomed to authority, Elias commented softly. They began to believe their own fabrications. The command vehicle vibrated with activity as data streams coalesced into an incontrovertible account. Patient histories, surveillance footage, financial transactions, communication logs. Each element bolstered the others, forming an unshakable foundation.
Hospital Administrator Renshaw is in custody, reported the Charway team. No resistance was encountered as she attempted to access sealed documents within her office. Principals of the billing department have been detained, added Bravo team. Multiple servers were confiscated. The chain of custody has been meticulously maintained. Elias observed the displays, feeling an increasing lightness in his chest with each confirmation. The truth was no longer fragile. It was no longer confined to his sorrowful recollections or interred within manipulated records. It was officially documented, replicated, and disseminated across secure federal repositories. They were incapable of making it vanish. A priority alert flashed across the main display. Moreno adjusted her posture, her hand pressed to her earpiece. Confirmation from hospital security, she announced. Dr. Preston Hargrove has been located. He is in the East Wing, 3rd floor, attending to his morning patient consultations.
The room fell silent. Every gaze shifted to Elias. He is still unaware, Cleni stated gently. He is still playing the role of the healer, still believing himself to be beyond consequence. Sunlight streamed through the hospital's glass entryway, casting elongated shadows across the bustling concourse. Patients occupied plastic seating, perusing outdated periodicals and consulting their mobile devices. A local news crew had already established their equipment near the information counter, their camera focused intently on the main entrance. A tip regarding significant developments had drawn them, much like sharks to the scent of blood. The initial intimation that something was amiss emanated from the security personnel. They abruptly straightened, their hands descending to radios that had inexplicably ceased functioning. Then, the primary doors swung inward. Federal agents advanced in a seamless formation, their badges prominently displayed, an aura of purpose radiating from their every stride. No sirens wailed, no voices were raised in alarm, no theatrical displays ensued. Simply the quiet, unwavering authority of justice, finally arriving. Patrons looked up from their devices, conversations halting mid-sentence as additional agents emerged from auxiliary entrances, securing egress points with practiced efficiency. On the 3rd floor, Dr. Preston Hargrove stood within an examination chamber, reviewing a patient chart with the same condescending assurance he had always projected. His white coat was immaculate, his bearing impeccable, his entire demeanor conveying the unassailable superiority that had empowered him to dictate who merited care and who could endure to wait. As I was remarking, he stated to his patient, "These concerns appear rather premature." The doorway opened. 2 agents clad in tactical gear entered, followed by 3 in suits. The glint of their badges caught the fluorescent illumination. Dr. Preston Hargrove, the lead agent, declared, "You are under apprehension." Hargrove's countenance shifted through a spectrum of emotions: bewilderment, indignation, the nascent stirrings of dread. "This is preposterous. Do you comprehend the magnitude of my standing?" "Yes, sir. We are acutely aware of your identity." The agent advanced, handcuffs at the ready. "You possess the right to remain silent."
I demand to consult my legal counsel. Hargrove's voice escalated, fracturing slightly. This is harassment. I am a highly respected medical practitioner. The restraints snapped shut with metallic finality. Down the corridor, mobile phones captured footage as the distinguished physician was escorted past astonished nurses and incredulous interns. A hushed query was uttered. Is this genuinely occurring?
In her penthouse office, Gail Renshaw was midway through a pronouncement during a damage control assembly when her door was forcefully opened. Her practiced administrative smile froze as agents entered. Ms. Renshaw, federal agents, you are under arrest for conspiracy, evidence fabrication, and obstruction of justice. This is an error, she stated reflexively, her public relations training taking precedence. All matters were handled in accordance with established protocols. However, her composure faltered as restraints materialized. Genuine panic flooded her features, the kind that arises from the stark realization of the sheer volume of evidence they must have amassed. Her heels produced a staccato rhythm as agents escorted her past the executive suite from which she had masterminded numerous cover-ups. Across the city, Detective Vince Malaloy emerged from the police station, adjusting his jacket with the nonchalant confidence of an individual who commanded his domain.
He managed to take 3 steps before federal agents converged upon him. Detective Malloy, you are under arrest for conspiracy and corruption under the guise of official authority. Come now, gentlemen, he attempted, his affable facade beginning to crumble. We can resolve this amicably. Whatever misapprehensions you may harbor, the handcuffs effectively terminated his negotiation. Officers, whom he had previously commanded, observed from the station steps as he was guided toward a waiting vehicle, authority dissolving like the morning mist. Back in the hospital foyer, staff members congregated in hushed groups, whispering as further arrests ensued. Information technology managers who had expunged visual records, administrators who had suppressed grievances, security personnel who had intimidated witnesses. The entire apparatus of silence was being systematically dismantled in broad daylight. Elias Ward stood near the information counter, his official identification prominently displayed on his belt, uttering not a word. His mere presence conveyed a profound statement. Each individual led past in restraints represented a component of the very system that had failed Naomi, had failed countless others, and had presumptuously believed they would never face accountability. Dr. Hargrove emerged from the elevator, flanked by 2 agents, his once impeccable posture now rigid with shock. He surveyed the lobby with desperation, searching for allies, for an avenue of escape, for anyone who might still offer him protection. Then, his gaze encountered Elias. Recognition struck with the force of a physical blow. Hargrove's steps faltered as comprehension dawned, not merely of Elias's identity, but of the full extent to which his arrogance had blinded him. Not just a grieving widower, but a federal operative. Not just a singular fatality, but a pervasive pattern of neglect now meticulously documented in federal evidence. Not merely a tragedy to be interred, but justice that had been steadily amassing strength in profound silence. Reporters surged forward, their voices clamoring with questions. Camera flashes erupted, yet Hargrove could not divert his attention from Elias, from the quiet fortitude that had systematically dismantled his world of privilege and protection. In that precise instant, the physician finally experienced the sensation his victims had endured. Helplessness, unheard, at the mercy of forces beyond his dominion. Elias met his gaze with unwavering composure, his badge gleaming, displaying neither triumph nor animosity. He required no verbal articulation. The evidence would suffice. The truth would resonate. Every voice that had been suppressed would finally be amplified. The hospital's automated portals parted with a faint hiss. Hargrove made one final attempt to assert his authority,
to demand his rights, to invoke legal counsel, to threaten repercussions. But his voice diminished under the immense weight of reality. His reputation offered no sanctuary. His connections provided no concealment. His power was ephemeral, and it was disintegrating under the morning light. As the agents guided Hargrove toward the awaiting vehicle, his eyes met Elias's one last time. Within that gaze lay the desperate realization of a man who had considered himself inviolable, finally comprehending the profound cost of his decisions. The doors closed behind him with a quiet, definitive finality, irrevocably separating him from the realm of impunity he had constructed upon the suffering of others. The federal courtroom throbbed with palpable tension. Morning sunlight filtered through the towering casements, casting elongated shadows across the polished mahogany and the somber countenances of those present. Elias occupied a seat directly behind the prosecution's table, his posture erect, his gaze fixed upon the unfolding proceedings. Surrounding him, the gallery was densely packed with families, mothers, fathers, children who had lost cherished ones to a system that had regarded their anguish as an inconvenience. Dr. Preston Hargrove sat at the defense table, his once impeccable presentation now bearing the marks of considerable strain. His bespoke suits had been supplanted by department store attire that seemed to hang awkwardly upon his frame. Adjacent to him, his highly compensated legal advocate shuffled documents with escalating desperation. "The United States calls Priya Shah," Moreno announced, her voice distinct and measured. Priya approached the witness stand, her gait measured yet resolute. After being duly sworn, she settled into the chair, adjusting her spectacles with unhesitating hands. "Ms. Shah, please elucidate your responsibilities at Metropolitan General Hospital," Moreno commenced. "I held the position of Senior Compliance Accountant, tasked with the review of billing patterns and risk management metrics." Priya's voice resonated clearly, her professional demeanor subtly concealing the apprehension she had endured for months. "And what discrepancies did you identify concerning Dr. Hargrove's department?" "We documented instances of what are termed optimization delays, periods during which high-risk patients were retained without escalated medical attention. These delays directly correlated with insurance status and racial demographics." Priya gestured toward charts prominently displayed on the courtroom's projection screen. African American mothers exhibited a threefold increased likelihood of experiencing these delays. The defense attorney rose. "Objection, speculation." "Overruled," the judge responded. "The witness is presenting factual data." Moreno continued her methodical examination. "What transpired when you reported these findings?" "Ms. Renshaw instructed me to reclassify the delays as postponements initiated by the patient. When I declined, I was reassigned to accounts receivable." In the gallery, several individuals nodded grimly. They had personally lived these statistical realities. The evidence accumulated steadily throughout the morning session. Hospital footage recovered from auxiliary servers depicted Hargrove repeatedly dismissing urgent symptoms. Audio recordings captured his casual indifference to suffering. The identical phrases recurred with various patients, invariably minimizing their distress, invariably delaying treatment. "The discomfort cannot possibly be that severe," his voice echoed through the courtroom's audio system. "These individuals invariably exaggerate." Elias's jaw tightened at the pronoun "these." In the gallery, a woman discreetly wiped away tears as she recognized the very language employed prior to her sister's demise. The prosecution presented financial records establishing a connection between Judge Harold Pritchard and hospital contributions, meticulously timed donations that followed the dismissal of formal complaints. News of Pritchard's resignation and the freezing of his assets had been disseminated that very morning, another bastion of protection crumbling. During a brief interlude, Moreno conferred with Elias near the water dispenser. "Renshaw's plea agreement is finalized," she murmured.
She will provide testimony regarding the established cover-up protocols tomorrow. Elias offered a nod. Gail Renshaw had capitulated swiftly once confronted with the undeniable evidence, her carefully cultivated facade shattering under the weight of federal indictments. Her testimony would delineate years of systematic discrimination masquerading as standard policy. Upon the resumption of proceedings, recorded telephone conversations involving Detective Malloy were played.
Casual dialogues pertaining to the management of investigations, ensuring certain complaints did not escalate into significant issues. His voice was cordial, reasonable, and utterly damning. Dr. Hargrove's defense strategy visibly deteriorated as each piece of evidence was presented. His counsel attempted to argue matters of context, of medical judgment, of the inherent pressures within a high-volume medical facility, but there remained no plausible explanation for the pattern captured in cold data and even colder recordings. A junior resident testified under oath, recounting instances of being directed to falsify patient records. A billing specialist detailed the methodology by which delays were coded to maximize insurance reimbursements. Each witness added another component to the edifice of evidence, rendering it impossible to dismiss these fatalities as isolated occurrences or unfortunate mishaps. The families in the gallery remained seated with unwavering posture throughout the entire ordeal. Some held photographs of departed loved ones, others clasped hands or clutched notebooks where they had meticulously chronicled their own struggles against the system. They had been informed for years that their experiences lacked validity, that their pain was inconsequential, that their losses were, in some inexplicable way, attributable to their own failings. Now they bore witness as the truth was finally acknowledged within the halls of justice. Every item of evidence validated their deeply held convictions that their loved ones had merited compassionate care, had merited dignity, had merited the right to live. Hargrove appeared to diminish in stature as the day progressed. His confident smirk gradually receded. His whispered consultations with his attorney became increasingly agitated. The evidence he could neither charm nor intimidate into submission continued to accumulate, relentlessly eroding the foundations of his authority. The charges mounted, resembling a precarious stack of stones. Multiple civil rights violations, each carrying significant federal penalties. Fraudulent counts linked to fabricated records and manipulated financial accounts. Obstruction of justice for the coordinated concealment efforts. Conspiracy resulting in loss of life, the gravest accusation, supported by years of documented patterns and practices. Late in the afternoon, the prosecution presented Naomi's final vital signs, juxtaposed with the tampered monitor logs. The technical evidence was irrefutable, but it was the human toll that permeated the courtroom. The profound loss of a mother, a wife, a future deliberately extinguished. Elias observed the entire scenario with the same controlled demeanor he had maintained for months. Yet his hands, clasped in his lap, revealed whitened knuckles as the full extent of the conspiracy was exposed. The judge meticulously reviewed the evidence summary with stern attention. Her gaze shifted between the documents and Hargrove, between the data and the families whose lives it intimately represented. When she looked up, her decision was clearly discernible in her expression. Given the overwhelming evidence presented, this court will proceed with sentencing as scheduled. She consulted her personal calendar. The sentencing hearing is appointed for 2 weeks from today's date. The defendant shall remain remanded in custody until that time. As the pronouncement settled over the courtroom, Elias felt a constricting sensation in his chest begin to release. For the first instance since Naomi's passing, he drew a full, deep inhalation. The air possessed a different quality. Not pleasant, not triumphant, but burdened by the weight of truth finally articulated aloud. Spring sunlight bathed the new community clinic's exterior, warming the crisp morning air.
A vibrant banner extended across the entrance, its lettering bold and dignified. Naomi Ward Maternal Care Initiative. The assembly gathered on the lawn represented a diverse cross-section of the community. Medical professionals, local families, advocacy groups, and public officials who had championed the cause of reform. Nurse Tessa Glenn occupied a wheelchair near the podium, still recuperating from her assault, yet radiating a quiet resilience. Her hands rested upon the ceremonial ribbon in her lap, her fingers tracing the silken texture of the fabric. The preceding months had left discernible traces, a subtle tremor in her movements, deliberate rotations of her head, but her gaze remained sharp and unwavering. Dr. Aidan Park stood among the clinic's new personnel, his white coat immaculate, his posture reflecting both pride and humility. The young resident, who had once hesitated under Hargrove's imposing influence, had discovered his voice. He had testified at the trial, detailing the pervasive culture of fear that had deterred junior staff from challenging perilous decisions. Now, he would play a role in cultivating something altogether different. Federal representatives were clustered near the steps, their presence a potent reminder of how transformative change had finally been effectuated. The consent decrees they held were more than mere documents. They represented enforced commitments. Every medical facility within the region would be subjected to new protocols, enhanced oversight, and stringent consequences for discriminatory practices. Elias Ward stood slightly apart from the throng, his infant cradled securely in his arms. The baby had flourished in the months subsequent to the trial, healthy and robust, despite the profound trauma of their initial moments together. Observing the gathering, Elias experienced the familiar pang of Naomi's absence. Not the raw, incapacitating agony of early bereavement, but a constant awareness of all she deserved to have witnessed. The ceremony commenced with introductions. A community board representative elaborated on the comprehensive alterations mandated by federal intervention, including independent oversight committees endowed with genuine authority, compulsory bias training possessing actual enforcement mechanisms, and clearly defined escalation protocols that could not be superseded by the ego of a single practitioner. But perhaps most significantly, she continued, we are cultivating avenues for the ensuing generation. She outlined the scholarship program established in Naomi's honor, financed by assets confiscated during the investigation. These scholarships would provide support for African American students pursuing careers in nursing, midwifery, and maternal health care. We are not merely altering regulations, we are diversifying the very individuals who formulate them. Tessa Glenn wheeled forward for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Her hands were steady now as she raised the scissors. Prior to making the cut, she addressed the assembly, her voice resonating clearly across the lawn. I spent 3 decades observing the same narratives unfold repeatedly, she stated. Witnessing capable individuals remain silent because speaking out felt insurmountable. Observing families become entangled in bureaucratic processes instead of obtaining justice. She met Elias's gaze momentarily. Naomi Ward was not the initial mother we lost to this system. However, due to her husband's unwavering refusal to capitulate, due to everyone who ultimately prioritized truth over complacency, she will be among the last. The scissors flashed in the sunlight. The ribbons separated and drifted apart. Applause surged through the assembled crowd. Dr. Park stepped forward to expound upon the clinic's therapeutic philosophy. His voice had gained a newfound confidence since the trial, conveying the authority of someone who had personally comprehended the profound cost of silence. Every individual who enters these premises will be heard, he declared with conviction. Every concern will be addressed with utmost seriousness. Every life will be regarded as intrinsically precious. He gestured toward the diverse staff arrayed behind him. We have assembled a team that mirrors our community, a team that comprehends that cultural competency is not merely a platitude. It represents the critical distinction between survival and demise. The federal administrator overseeing the consent decree detailed essential modifications.
immediate protocols for addressing maternal distress, mandatory record-keeping for all monitoring actions, and unambiguous accountability structures resistant to bureaucratic obstruction. What had previously been mere recommendations were now legally enforceable mandates with tangible repercussions. These changes, she underscored, were not optional. They represented legally binding pledges subject to federal oversight. Any institution failing to adhere would face immediate sanctions. Representatives from nearby academic medical centers announced collaborative initiatives with the clinic, establishing training placements that would prioritize fairness alongside clinical proficiencies. A community representative elaborated on the newly structured oversight committee, outlining its responsibilities for examining grievances, verifying adherence, and ensuring its autonomy from the hospital's administrative hierarchy. Finally, the moment arrived for Elias to address the assembly. He approached the lectern with deliberate steps, his infant still cradled in his arms. A hush fell over the gathering, acknowledging the profound significance of the occasion. He surveyed the assembled faces, some familiar from the arduous months of inquiry and litigation, others new allies in the pursuit of reform. Naomi championed inherent worth, he began, his voice imbued with a steadiness that belied the evident emotion in his eyes. She firmly believed that every individual merited being heard, esteemed, and treated with fundamental human regard. He shifted his grip on the child, whose tiny hand reached out towards the microphone with an inquisitive touch.
She was more than merely my spouse. She was a positive force in this world, possessing intellect, compassion, and an unwavering refusal to accept that certain lives held less value than others. He paused, collecting his thoughts. This clinic's purpose is not retribution. It is not about punishment. It is about constructing, at long last, what should have been in place from the outset. A sanctuary where every mother's suffering is acknowledged, where every family's anxieties are heard, where no one is marginalized due to their ethnicity or background. The infant uttered a soft sound, eliciting a gentle wave of amusement from the crowd. Elias offered a faint smile. My child will grow up understanding that their mother's name is synonymous with progress, that her life compelled a broken system to confront its failings, that her memory is not solely a source of sorrow, but a catalyst for action.
The applause commenced gradually, then swelled, cascading across the grounds like a series of waves. Tessa Glenn discreetly wiped moisture from her eyes. Dr. Park stood taller, his countenance reflecting a renewed sense of purpose. Federal officials offered solemn nods, acknowledging commitments made and subsequently fulfilled. Elias remained at the podium, beneath the banner bearing Naomi's name, their child's hands stretching towards the sunlight. The applause persisted, conveying not just approval, but a shared resolve. A collective promise to remember, to diligently safeguard these hard-won advancements, ensuring Naomi's legacy endures beyond mere pronouncements. As dusk descended upon the tranquil neighborhood, the sky transformed into deepening hues of amethyst and gold. Elias Ward traversed the familiar sidewalk, his baby secure against his chest in a sling. The gentle cadence of their footsteps harmonized with the steady hum of crickets commencing their nightly serenade. The same route now felt profoundly altered. The residences that had borne witness to his profound sorrow mere months prior now observed a man transformed. Not entirely mended, perhaps, but fundamentally reshaped. Akin to steel tempered by fire, the anguish had not diminished so much as it had been reforged into something purposeful. His child stirred, emitting those soft, contented sounds that occasionally still caught his breath. Delicate fingers clasped the material of his shirt, imbued with trust and security. The evening air carried the fragrant notes of freshly cut grass and cooling asphalt. These were the ordinary details Naomi would have noticed and cherished. Your mother relished evenings such as this, Elias murmured to his infant. She would recline on our porch and recount all the subtle nuances that most people overlooked. The way the light illuminated the foliage at a particular angle, how one could discern the changing seasons by the melodies of the birds.
A woman tending to her garden offered a welcoming wave as they passed. She had testified during the trial, a former patient of Heroff's who had endured his neglect yet bore its lasting marks. Her presence in the vicinity served as another reminder of the world's transformation, not through vociferous protest or overt aggression, but through the persistent application of truth, finally articulated aloud. Elias adjusted his child's hat, recalling the day's earlier ceremony. The clinic was slated to open its doors the following day, initiating the substantial endeavor of translating assurances into tangible practices. Dr. Park had already arranged for staff training sessions, resolute in fostering an environment where speaking out was an expectation, not an offense. The essence of authority, Elias continued his quiet discourse with his offspring, lies not in possessing the most commanding voice or the highest designation. It resides in the unwavering commitment to confront wrongdoing. He contemplated Nurse Tessa Glenn, who had risked everything to furnish him with that initial critical piece of evidence. At times, the most resilient individuals are those who consistently persevere, performing their duties with integrity, even when faced with considerable adversity. They proceeded past the local police precinct, its windows mirroring the setting sun. Detective Malloy's desk now stood vacant, his badge surrendered upon the revelation of his pervasive misconduct. The new captain had already implemented corrective measures, mandatory reporting protocols, stringent documentation requirements, and the cessation of informal interdepartmental courtesies. A gentle breeze rustled the maple trees lining the thoroughfare. Elias recalled his own overwhelming anger during those initial days. The allure of responding to malevolence with violence, of inflicting upon Herov a fraction of the agony he had caused. Yet, such a path would have repudiated every principle Naomi held dear. "Your mother imparted a vital lesson," he stated, his voice unwavering despite the burden of recollection. "She demonstrated that genuine strength is not derived from instilling fear in others. It is cultivated through the act of ameliorating circumstances, even when that course is more arduous than inflicting harm." The baby yawned, settling deeper into his embrace. Elias smiled, reflecting on how these evening strolls had become their cherished routine. Initially, they had offered an escape from the pervasive emptiness of their home. Now, they felt more akin to a meditative practice, a period for contemplation of their journey thus far and the road still ahead. A group of medical students passed by, en route to the bus terminal. They wore the distinctive lanyards of the Naomi Ward Scholarship Program, their animated conversation punctuated with discussions of patient advocacy and public health initiatives. One of them recognized Elias and offered a respectful nod, not with commiseration, but with an understanding of the impact his struggle had engendered. "Progress unfolds incrementally," Elias continued his gentle soliloquy. "It resembles the meticulous construction of a legal case, assembling facts one by one until the truth becomes incontrovertible." He mused on the federal consent decrees, the newly established oversight committees, and the training programs extending to other healthcare facilities. Occasionally, justice manifests in the form of administrative documents, meetings, and rather unexciting regulations. However, those very regulations are instrumental in preserving lives. They turned onto their street as the first stars began to emerge. Porch lights flickered on, casting warm pools of illumination in the deepening twilight. Their own residence stood serene yet inviting. Naomi's window boxes still overflowed with the perennial blooms she had planted. "I once believed that resilience equated to an absence of fear," Elias confessed softly. "But your mother possessed a deeper wisdom. She taught me that true courage lies in acknowledging fear and speaking out regardless. It involves leveraging whatever influence one possesses to safeguard those in need of protection." The baby had succumbed to slumber, resting peacefully against his heartbeat. Elias paused at the edge of their driveway, gazing upward at the darkening sky. The world had not miraculously transformed into an equitable or benevolent realm.
Racism had not vanished. Prejudice had not dissolved. Injustice had not relinquished its hold. However, a fundamental shift had occurred. The silence that had shielded Herov had been shattered. The system that had facilitated his actions had been exposed. The destructive pattern that had claimed Naomi's life and had nearly claimed so many others had been disrupted.
Not through aggression or retribution, but through the patient, unwavering application of truth and legal principle.
"Your mother altered the course of events," Elias whispered, carefully ascending their porch steps. Not by exhibiting the loudest voice or the most fervent anger, but by articulating an unassailable clarity regarding what is right. And when individuals attempted to suppress that truth, we refused to permit it. We persisted in our inquiry, continued our advocacy, and relentlessly insisted that her life held profound significance. The porch swing swayed gently in the evening breeze. It was Naomi's preferred spot, where she had dedicated countless evenings to conceptualizing community programs and devising strategies to assist others. It did not appear vacant now, but rather expectant, preserving a space for the ongoing work. Naomi. Elias uttered her name into the hushed air, experiencing not the sharp pang of grief, but the solid affirmation of triumph. Not merely a legal victory, although that was crucial, but the more profound triumph of refusing to allow power to conceal itself behind silence, of asserting that every life warranted dignity, of demonstrating that justice was not merely an abstract concept, but a conscious choice actualized through action. If you have found this narrative engaging, please express your support for my channel with a like and subscribe to ensure you don't miss future installments. On your screen, I have curated 2 distinct stories tailored specifically for your enjoyment. I wish you a most wonderful day.